We'll have Manhattan, the Bronx and Staten Island too. It's lovely.
I'm James Wilson. Every gentleman or gentlelady should have a signature cocktail. For me, the signature cocktail is that great old classic, the Manhattan. A Manhattan was originated, according to legend, around 1870 in Paris, France, where so many great cocktails were born. And it's called a Manhattan supposedly because it was at the Manhattan Hotel that Americans frequented in Paris. The Manhattan is basically comprised of 3 ingredients: a spirit, a sweet, and a bitter. The spirit is typically either rye or bourbon. Today we're going to make one of each. The sweet, in this case, is sweet vermouth. And then at the top of the drink, we're going to sprinkle in bitters. Today I'm going to use black walnut bitters. Flavor-infused bitters are not required, however, they're very popular these days and they add an additional flavor to any cocktail. Today we're going to make our first Manhattan with rye, and we're going to make it neat, and it's going to be served in a martini glass. Neat, meaning, of course, no ice. The historically traditional ratio of a Manhattan's ingredients is 2 parts of the spirit, in this case rye, and 1 part vermouth. And then the bitters, a couple of drops on the top, as I said. We'll start with the spirit. We're going to pour in 2 ounces of rye. And 1 ounce of vermouth. We'll stir it in our pitcher here. Just gently. We want to let the vermouth just drop into the spirit and then give it a gentle stir. We'll pour it in the martini glass. Sprinkle in a couple of drops of the bitters. Add a cherry for some flavor, but mostly for effect. And we have concocted our rye Manhattan.
It's lovely.
Now we're going to make a second Manhattan, this time on the rocks. I mentioned that the traditional recipe for a Manhattan is 2 parts of rye or bourbon and 1 part vermouth. My own particular preference is 3 parts of the spirit and 1 part of the vermouth, in part because I enjoy the taste of bourbon, and I just like that ratio a little better. It's a little drier. Bourbon tends to be on the sweeter side than rye anyway, so I think it's a good ratio. Works for me. The lesson here being that when you start to make cocktails, don't feel too attached to the official combination. What you like should have some significant input on how you make the drink. We're going to make our bourbon Manhattan right in the glass. As you can see, I've added the ice. I'm going to start with 3 ounces of bourbon. That's 2 ounces, and then 1 more. Next, I'm going to add 1 ounce of sweet vermouth. I'm going to just, as I say, kind of plop it down in the middle. I'll sprinkle in my couple of drops of bitters. Give it a gentle stir. Add a cherry. I like to drink it through straws. That's just a personal preference. Bourbon Manhattan on the rocks. And a rye Manhattan. Some people enjoy this combination of ingredients with scotch and sweet vermouth. Instead of calling that a Scotch Manhattan, it's known as a Rob Roy. You can use the same ratios.
It's lovely going through.
There is a Manhattan known as a dry Manhattan, which instead of using an ounce of sweet vermouth, an ounce of dry vermouth is used. Then there's a Manhattan known as a perfect Manhattan. That doesn't mean it's ideally made. What it means is instead of using just an ounce of either sweet vermouth or dry vermouth, you use 1/2 ounce of sweet vermouth and 1/2 ounce of dry vermouth. That's the perfect Manhattan. That is perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, the Manhattan.
Go, we'll turn Manhattan into an